If you fail to plan, you better plan to fail. It's the thinking part that's the most important part. It's not the plan itself. The anxiety that people can get before they start planning will actually stop them from planning, because it's like, oh my gosh, we have to have this monumental mapped out plan. No, you don't. You really don't. When goes wrong, something is going to go wrong. Plans have got to be dynamic. Hello, I'd like to welcome you all to the Wisdom of Wrench podcast. My name is Kevin Comerford. I am your host, and in studio, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Zaragoza, who is behind the mic, of course, to be the voice of the people. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm fired up for today. I'm really excited. Yeah.
We got a lot of good ones on tap today, and starting with this first one, which I'm really excited about. It is a common service language. It is a culture necessity in every business and in every personal life for a human being, Andrew, and it's this: if you fail to plan, you better plan to fail. A lot of emphasis there, Andrew, on the word to. Of course, we're going to be talking about the big three, breaking this thing down into three parts. First part is, the context, the meaning, and where in the heck did I learn this? Who did I learn it from? Second is, maybe this is the first time you've heard it, and where do I start? What does good planning look like? And then the third part is a little more advanced planning. Once you get the start going, there's really some cool stuff you can start doing, which I call more advanced planning, that I started later in my career. So let's jump in. Part one, context, meaning. Where did I learn this? I learned this concept from someone who I believe is a legend in the home services business. It's not that I believe is a legend. Jim Abrams was one of my main mentors in business when I first started in this industry in 1993. I saw him speak many, many times, was part of his group, Contractor Success Group, Airtime 500, phenomenal motivator, businessman, really set the stage for so many of us. My father is so grateful to him for making my father millions of dollars with his business. And my father will tell you that today, that my father and mother give a lot of credit to Jim and what he taught them. So I'm sitting there in one of my first classes that Jim taught, and he says this quote: if you plan to fail, if you fail to plan, you better plan to fail. So I said earlier that you got to really focus on the word to. Nowhere does it say that if you fail to have a plan, it's not have. It's to plan. It's the thinking part that's the most important part. It's not the plan itself. It's the work that you do to create the plan, whether it be by yourself or in business, even more importantly, with your team. It's the process you go through to create whatever it is that you want to create. One of the most historic presidents of all time, Dwight D. Eisenhower, said this quote: "Plans are worthless. Process of planning is everything." The process, the thinking. Why? Because the prior thought before you go into something, before you begin to execute, allows you to have flexibility when shit goes wrong. Because something is going to go wrong. Plans have got to be dynamic. It's not this paper that, okay, we stick to this. No, plans have got to be dynamic, and it's only the process of planning that allows you to have that dynamic component to it. Because you're constantly adjusting. You're constantly learning. You're constantly shifting. And to plan is truly to think. And adjust. And to learn. There's no such thing as success and failure. There's only success and learning. And when you are going through something and you know you've made a mistake or an adjustment or whatever, it's time to adjust. And had you gone through that process of planning prior to, you and your team are so much more capable to find success.
Would you say, because sometimes I think in the planning stage, we want to kind of perfect everything. We want to control we want to prepare for all the variables and the what ifs and the oh no's and the blah, blah, blahs. But I feel like maybe with this approach of just understanding that just to have a plan, not necessarily, or to plan, not necessarily to have a plan, sort of alleviates a little bit of that pressure of coming up with the perfect plan, because it's almost like a byproduct of execution is just by going through the process, right? The thought process. Am I reading that right?
No, you're 100% right, Andrew. The anxiety that people can create or can get before they start planning will actually stop them from planning, because it's like, oh my gosh, we have to have this monumental mapped out plan. No, you don't. You really don't. It's get people together, or just carve out some time if you're doing this alone to just think through some stuff, write some things down.
Yeah, it's like just asking somebody for an extra set of eyes. But what this also reminds me of is if I say red Tesla, everybody driving right now is probably going to start seeing red Teslas, just because like now your mind is thinking about it.
Yes.
So when in the planning stage, I would assume that now if your mind's thinking about problem solving, problems are probably going to get solved.
Amen. Amen. So the second part we're going to talk about is, where do I start? Where do I start? And I'm going to talk about a specific area that you can start personally. And I've said it many times on this podcast. I'm going to dig in a little bit further. But planning is daily. To plan is daily. Meaning, if you fail to plan, if you fail to think about your day to come, you can just bet that your day's going to be average. The daily planning process is actually kind of a funny one, because, again, I've said this before. I think it's so important. I'm going to say it again. You must look back in order to accelerate forward. Something I was taught by Jeff Olson in his great book called Slight Edge. He goes into detail and talks about the society, or the rest of the world or society, is living with to-do lists. We write to-do lists. Yes. And the challenge with to-do lists is you're always looking at what's missing. Where he talks about you need to shift the focus to start with accomplishment lists and focus on what's been done first. Focus on what's been done rather than constantly focusing on what's missing. Because if you're always focused on what's missing, where your energy goes, where your focus goes, your energy flows. If I'm constantly focused on what's missing, to-do list, what I still need to do, ooh, baby, chances of lacking momentum are greatly increased because the planning in the morning is about momentum, looking back. Again, in order to accelerate forward, feel it. Feel he calls it an accomplishment list. I always write out and talk about and write down in my journal, what are my 3 to 5 wins? What are my 3 to 5 biggies that I accomplished today or yesterday? And that gets my mind going. I am focused on these things. What did I move forward on? What did I learn yesterday? What am I grateful for? What promises did I make to myself yesterday that I kept? Huge confidence builder. Because what looking back does, it compounds growth. It reinforces progress. It gives so much clarity and creativity. Now you're ready to look forward to, okay, what do I want to accomplish today? And the prioritization is so much more clear. Okay, great. What did I accomplish yesterday? What do I need to accomplish today? The third and final part that I want to talk about is advanced planning. And I got to give credit to a gentleman by the name of Don Beveridge, who is most famous for his presentation, Why Companies and Humans Fail or Succeed. He talks about it's never a deficiency of knowledge. It's always a deficiency of execution. Never a deficiency of knowledge. People know what to do. It always comes down to, did they do it? Did they execute? Well, as part of that presentation that Don Beveridge gave, and by the way, Don was a sales leader in his organization. He talked about the importance of having a plan before you go into the next week. On Friday, you need to be thinking through, what is it that I want to accomplish next week? And for leaders, it usually comes down to these 4 questions, because you want to end up with top three crucial results for next week. Okay? And so asking yourself these questions when you're planning for the week. And by the way, your planning for the week always starts by looking back. My plan for the week always starts by looking back. What were my top accomplishments from the previous week? So remember, I'm keeping my accomplishments every single day in my journal. So when it comes to my weekly plan, I'm pulling out my top 5 to 7 from the week and saying, these were my big wins. Why? Because it creates momentum. It creates energy. It's reminders that you're a badass, Kevin. Great job. It is so easy for me to forget all that I accomplished and feel very deficient. It's a part of being a type A personality. So here are the 4 questions that I ask myself when I'm doing this advanced planning for the week. What am I doing this week to drive sales? What am I doing this week to specifically drive sales? Let me get more specific. What am I doing this week to recruit and develop more talent into my company? Answer that question. What are you doing to recruit and develop more talent into your company? What am I doing to market my business more out to the public to drive more leads? And the final thing is, what am I doing this week to help create and reinforce the culture of the business. Now remember, specific to be terrific. When I'm planning my week and I'm thinking through, okay, those 4 questions, I'm looking to hone in. Okay, what is, remember, I have my list of what I accomplished last week. So now how can I continue to move forward with the items that I accomplished last week? Because at the end of the day, when I'm planning my week, I want to end up with 3 crucial results. By the way, if you want to go back and see the weekly plan, you can go back and listen to a podcast that I did specifically on the weekly plan back in the journaling. It was a 3-part series on journaling. Part 2 really digs into the weekly plan. No need for me to go into that this week right now, or right now, because it's just the importance of going from the daily plan to the advanced planning and the importance of going through that thinking process. So just to wrap up this wonderful concept that Jim Abrams taught, which is if you fail to plan, you better plan to fail. I spoke earlier, I kicked it off by talking about the importance of the word in that statement, which is to plan, not the plan itself. To plan, the thinking process leading up and going into something or a project. Second thing we talked about was how this shows up or where do I start? And I said, again, I talked about the importance of starting daily and looking back in order to accelerate forward. The third thing we talked about was advanced planning and the importance of thinking through your week on a Friday, looking at spending time on Friday, looking at, okay, what do I want to accomplish next week? And in particular, the top 3 things. So that's it, Andrew. Gosh, that's it, buddy.
That was awesome. And so anybody on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, the journaling series, so we'll put up the first one that'll show up at, as they call it, an end plate. So as this plays through, you'll see basically a pop-up to just click that video and watch that next. If you're on the audio side, so Spotify, Apple, just check the link in the description because that series was really cool because, again, I've talked about this before where, I wasn't like, I have a hard time with just keeping track of all those thoughts because I can write everything down, but I'll never go back and actually, revisit it. You have a full strategy for it. It's pretty intense. But you also explain like, hey, it took you a long time to figure it out. Yeah. And the full playbook is in this series. So the success leaves clues, and Kevin literally just gave you the full blueprint, not just a couple of clues. So highly recommend it. So again, on YouTube, it'll pop up very soon on Spotify and Apple and any other audio platform. Just check the link in the description.
Great. And Andrew just did our wrap-up, team. So here's to a bigger future. Thanks, everybody.